Imagine staring at a massive spreadsheet with like 10,000 rows of raw performance data.
Oh, an absolute nightmare.
Right. You are absolutely drowning in numbers, but somehow you're, completely starving for clarity.
Yeah, totally blind.
And that is the exact paradox we are tackling today on episode 13 of our deep dive series, Data Design with Mokkup. Today is April 9th, 2026. And we are unpacking the ultimate solution to this information overload in the modern business world.
We are talking about key performance indicators and, crucially, the dashboard wireframing tools that actually make them readable.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is to figure out, not just how to choose the right metrics, but how to actually use wireframing tools like Mokkup.ai to translate those metrics into a visual interface. An interface that, well, actually drives decisions.
Because you're just building this massive engine of data collection without a way to visualize the output. I mean, it's incredibly dangerous.
You're just hoarding data at that point.
Exactly. You end up moving extremely fast, burning through cash with no steering wheel and, honestly, no windshield.
So we have to start by establishing what a key performance indicator, a KPI, actually is.
Right. At its core, it's a quantifiable measurement. It acts as a benchmark against your broader organizational objectives. But the critical distinction in our sources today is actionability.
Actionability, meaning like it has to do something.
Yes. A metric is just a number. A KPI is a number that triggers a specific business decision.
Okay, so if we count the number of paper clips in the supply closet, we have a metric.
Sure, yeah.
But knowing we have 400 paper clips doesn't change our corporate strategy.
No, it doesn't tell you anything about the long-term health of the business.
Right.
A classic example that gets used a lot to teach this is an artist who sets a goal to sell 10 paintings a month.
Okay, the artist.
The quantity 10 is the KPI. If they check their sales in week 2 and they've only sold like 2 paintings, that visible benchmark forces a change in behavior.
Ah, so they see they're behind.
Exactly. They have to, run a promotion or attend an art fair. It removes the emotion and forces an action for those final 2 weeks.
That's a great visual, but it's a bit rudimentary for our audience, right?
True.
If we scale that up to the modern business landscape, the sources point out that KPIs are absolutely not one size fits all.
No, definitely not.
The 10 paintings concept looks wildly different depending on the industry's underlying mechanics.
And what's fascinating here is how the structural differences totally dictate the metrics. The sources contrast a software company with a traditional retail chain.
Two very different beasts.
Very different. For a SaaS platform, software as a service, the entire valuation of the company is based on rapid, scalable growth. They aren't constrained by physical geography.
Right, they can sell to anyone, anywhere.
Exactly. Therefore, their primary KPI is usually year-over-year revenue growth.
Yeah.
They need to prove this explosive upward trajectory.
But then contrast that with a retail chain that relies on an actual physical footprint.
Yeah, brick and mortar.
They are constrained by the square footage of their stores and, the foot traffic of a specific neighborhood.
Which means tracking overall revenue growth doesn't give them a clear picture of their operational health.
Because if they open, say, 50 new stores this year, of course total revenue went up.
Exactly. But are they actually running good stores? That is why a retail chain focuses on same-store sales as their key metric.
Ah, isolating the variables.
Right. It isolates the performance of existing locations to see if the core business model is actually thriving, rather than just masking poor performance with rapid, expensive expansion.
So the question for you, listening right now, is what is the foundational mechanic of your specific industry? What is the one metric that, if it goes up, definitively proves your core strategy is working?
That's the golden question.
But I do want to push back on this whole concept for a second.
Let's hear it.
If we tell managers they need data to survive, the natural human instinct is to just, track everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how many emails did the team send? How many minutes did they spend logged into the CRM? Doesn't that just lead to aggressive micromanagement and the exact data paralysis we're trying to avoid?
Yes. Honestly, it's the most common trap in modern management.
Yeah.
If you flatten the hierarchy of your data and treat every single metric as equally important, the dashboard just becomes useless noise.
Just a wall of numbers.
Right. So the cure for data paralysis is strict categorization. The sources lay out a taxonomy of KPIs based on who is looking at them and what time frame they represent. You have to think of it like different altitudes of a business.
Okay, let's climb those altitudes. Where do we start?
At 30,000 feet, you have strategic KPIs.
Mm.
These are the broad, high-level metrics used by the executive suite.
Like the CEO and CFO.
Exactly. We're talking about total profit margin, return on investment, overall market share.
The big picture stuff.
Right. Executives do not need to know the open rate of yesterday's email blast. They need to know if the overarching business model is profitable.
But the executive suite can't actually fix a problem on the ground. Like if the profit margin drops, the CEO can't just magically make the line go back up from their office.
Which is exactly why we bring it down to 10,000 feet. Operational KPIs.
Ah,
These run on shorter time frames, monthly, weekly, or even daily, and they monitor specific regions, segments, or product lines. The relationship between these two altitudes is causal.
causal, meaning one affects the other.
Yes. The strategic KPI is the smoke detector going off. The operational KPI is the thermal camera that tells you, oh, the fire started in the second floor kitchen.
That's a great way to put it. So let's trace that causality all the way down to the ground floor.
Ground level is your functional KPIs. These are the highly tailored metrics used by specific departments to measure their daily output against their goals.
So this would be like the finance department tracking the speed of new vendor registration?
Exactly. Or the IT department tracking server uptime. Very specific, very functional.
Got it. Now, I want to introduce another layer of categorization from the source material that I admittedly always find a little confusing.
Okay, what's that?
Leading versus lagging indicators. I struggle with this because, logically, every piece of data we collect is from the past, right?
Right. Technically speaking,
If I pull a report right now, it's based on things that have already happened. So how can any metric truly be a leading indicator?
it's a brilliant distinction to clarify. You are totally correct that the data itself was collected in the past. The difference lies in what the metric is predicting.
Predicting, okay.
A lagging indicator reflects the final outcome of an event that is completely finished. Total revenue for Q3 is a lagging indicator.
Because by the time you calculate it, Q3 is over.
Exactly. You can't change it. It's the rear view mirror of your business vehicle.
So a leading indicator is looking out the windshield. It's past data that predicts a future outcome.
Yes. And the sources use a fantastic example for this, tracking employee overtime hours on a factory floor.
Okay, so the hours were worked yesterday, past data.
Past data, yes. But a spike in overtime is a leading indicator for tomorrow's manufacturing quality. If your team is working like 60-hour weeks, they are exhausted.
Right, they're going to make mistakes.
Exactly. The metric tells management that in about 3 days, the error rate on the assembly line is going to skyrocket. You track the leading indicators so you can intervene before the lagging indicator, your profit margin, takes a hit.
Wow, that makes perfect sense. To really understand how all these altitudes and categories interact, let's build a little narrative.
I love a narrative.
Let's imagine we are launching a brand new tech product, say, a highly complex B2B software platform. Let's walk through the life cycle of that business and see how the departmental KPIs interact, rather than just listing them out like a textbook.
A product lifecycle approach is definitely the best way to see the hidden levers of a business.
Where do we start?
Before the software is even coded, we have to look at the people building it. That means starting with human resources and staffing KPIs.
Which honestly seem to be frequently overlooked.
They are. But they act as the ultimate leading indicators for the entire company.
So we are tracking, what, absenteeism rates and employee turnover.
Yes. If the lead engineers are suddenly taking a lot of sick days or quitting entirely, that's not just an HR problem.
Right, it is an existential threat to the product.
Massive. High turnover in software development means massive knowledge loss. The new engineers have to spend months learning the old code base, which drastically slows down development.
Oh, absolutely.
Furthermore, tracking employee satisfaction through internal surveys gives you a window into burnout. If satisfaction drops, you know a spike in turnover is imminent.
Okay, let's assume we stabilize the engineering team. They are happy they're working. Now we move into actually building the product, which brings in process performance KPIs.
Right, we need to track the operational effectiveness of the build.
The primary mechanic here being production efficiency and total cycle time. Like, how long does it take an engineer to take a feature from a conceptual ticket to deployed code?
But speed without quality is disastrous. So the balancing metric is the error rate. That's the number of bugs found divided by the lines of code shipped.
Because if you optimize purely for total cycle time, the engineers will just, write sloppy code to hit their speed metrics.
And that sloppy code breaks the next link in the chain.
Mm.
When the software launches full of bugs, who feels the impact first.
The customer service team.
Exactly. Now we are monitoring customer-centric KPIs. The bugs trigger a massive influx in the number of new ticket requests.
Which creates a massive backlog. The customer service reps are overwhelmed, so their average response time literally just how long it takes them to pick up the phone spikes.
And because the bugs are complex, the average resolution time stretches into days.
So the customers are furious and they start canceling their subscriptions.
A nightmare scenario.
Which brings us directly into the revenue-generating side of the house. Marketing and sales KPIs.
Right, because marketing is tracking website traffic and click-through rates on their digital ads, trying to push new users into the funnel to replace the ones who are leaving.
I want to stop here for a second because the dynamic between marketing and sales metrics is where companies make really fatal mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. It's a minefield.
Let's talk about customer acquisition cost, or CAC, versus customer lifetime value, or CLV. If I am the marketing director, my instinct is to get my CAC as low as humanly possible, right?
Naturally.
I want to acquire users for $10 instead of $50. I'll run, like, sensationalist clickbait ads on cheap platforms. My metrics will look amazing.
And by doing that, you could easily bankrupt the company.
Wait, really? Bankrupted?
Yes. Optimizing customer acquisition cost in a vacuum is a classic vanity metric trap. If you spend $10 to acquire a user through a misleading ad, that user will log into your software, realize it isn't what you promised, and cancel their subscription the next day.
Oh, I see.
Their customer lifetime value, the total revenue they bring to the business over the relationship, is only $15.
Meanwhile, the sales team could spend $200 to acquire an enterprise client through targeted outreach. The Seek looks terrible on paper.
Terrible.
But that enterprise client stays for 5 years and generates $20,000 in customer lifetime value.
The insight here is the ratio. Comparing CAC to CLV is the only way to determine if your growth is sustainable. You're looking for a healthy multiple, typically where lifetime value is at least 3 times the cost of acquisition.
3 times, okay.
Sales teams pair this with average conversion time to understand how long that capital will be tied up during the sales process.
Which naturally drops us into the bedrock of the entire operation. Financial KPIs. We've paid the engineers, we've bought the ads, the sales team has closed the deals.
Now the chief financial officer is sweating over liquidity ratios.
Like the current ratio, to see if the company has enough short-term assets to cover its immediate payroll and server costs.
They're also examining solvency ratios, measuring total debt against total assets to ensure the company can survive long-term market fluctuations.
And for businesses dealing with physical goods, or in our software example, managing accounts receivable inventory turnover ratios are paramount.
Paramount.
Explain the mechanism behind the turnover ratio for us. Why does the speed of inventory matter if it all eventually sells anyway?
Because of cash churn. Capital tied up in a warehouse full of unsold coffee mugs or tied up in unpaid client invoices is dead capital.
It's just sitting there.
Right. The faster you turn over that inventory into actual cash, the faster you can take that cash and pump it back into the marketing department to acquire more customers. A high turnover ratio accelerates the entire growth loop of the business.
So we have successfully traced the data from a single stressed-out engineer all the way to the CFO's balance sheet.
They did.
But here's where it gets really interesting. We just painted a picture of a perfectly logical, data-driven machine. But the sources highlight a very dark side to these numbers.
Yeah.
When you introduce metrics to human psychology, things get messy.
They get incredibly messy. The economic principle at play here is Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Ah, KPIs are a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yes, they provide invaluable insights and motivate progress. But irrational targets completely destroy morale and incentivize self-destructive behavior.
The classic example is the customer service call center, isn't it?
It's always the call center.
Management decides the new operational KPI is that every call must be resolved in under 60 seconds. They think, great, we're optimizing for efficiency.
What they're actually doing is incentivizing their employees to provide terrible service. To keep their jobs and hit the 60-second metric, representatives will literally hang up on customers with complex problems.
Wow, just hang up.
Yes, the dashboard will show that handle times are incredibly fast, looking like a huge success. But out in the real world, customer satisfaction plummets and churn skyrockets. The metric destroyed the business objective.
The sources also point out a more subtle but equally dangerous limitation. The sheer amount of time required to collect and format this data.
The reporting burden.
Right. If a department spends 10 hours a week manually compiling a massive KPI report and the executive team only glances at it for 5 seconds before a meeting, I mean, that is a massive waste of human capital.
An unmonitored metric is worse than no metric at all because it creates the illusion of control while wasting resources. The data must be accurate, it must be logical, and it must be actively used in decision-making.
So this friction, the dark side of irrational targets, the crushing weight of data overload, and the danger of unread reports, this leads us directly to the core solution of this deep dive.
Right.
How do you prevent your company from drowning in spreadsheets? You don't just need the right KPIs, you need the right interface, you need dashboard wireframing.
Because selecting the metrics is only the first phase. Presenting them in a cognitive format that human beings can easily digest is what actually empowers strategic action.
Raw data is like staring at the ones and zeros of computer code.
Yes. You can theoretically understand what is happening, but it requires massive cognitive load.
So a dashboard wireframe is the beautiful user interface layered on top of that code. It translates the ones and zeros into like a playable video game.
But the crucial insight from our sources is the concept of wireframing at first, specifically using tools like Mokkup.ai before you ever hire a developer to build the final software.
Wait, explain why doing it before coding is so important.
Building a live data dashboard requires significant engineering resources. Connecting the APIs, structuring the databases, it costs tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, wow.
If you build it, deploy it, and then realize the layout is confusing or it emphasizes the wrong metrics, you have wasted a massive amount of capital.
So wireframing with Mokkup.ai allows a business to design the psychological flow of the data risk-free.
Exactly. You drag and drop the charts, you organize the visual hierarchy, and you tailor the specific views for different altitudes.
Oh, I see. So you can create a distinct, customized wireframe for the executive team that strips away the noise and only shows the high-level strategic KPIs.
The profit margins and market share.
Right. Then, using the same tool, you wireframe a totally different, hyper-detailed dashboard for the marketing managers, loaded with their operational and functional KPIs, the CEA and CLV ratios.
And it allows stakeholders to interact with a mock-up of the data environment. They can debate the layout, argue about which metric deserves the top left corner of the screen, and align their strategy before writing a single line of code.
It bridges the gap between raw, overwhelming data and actual human comprehension.
Perfectly said. By designing the data intentionally, you ensure that the numbers are telling a coherent, actionable story, rather than just shouting an endless stream of isolated facts at your management team.
So what does this all mean for us? We started by redefining the KPI, moving past simple metrics to find the actionable benchmarks that dictate strategy.
We followed the narrative of a business to see how human resources, operational processes, and marketing tactics all feed the financial engine.
We exposed the dark side of data, exploring how irrational targets force employees to game the system. And finally, we saw how utilizing dashboard wireframes, specifically through AI platforms like Mokkup.ai, provides the user interface necessary to turn that sea of numbers into clarity.
We covered a tremendous amount of ground, but before we wrap up, I want to pivot this entire concept inward.
Okay, I'm listening.
We spent so much time analyzing corporate structures, but human beings generate data every single day.
We do.
If you were sitting down at a wireframing tool right now to design a dashboard for your own life, your health, your career trajectory, your creative output, what is the single leading KPI you would track today to guarantee a better lagging result tomorrow?
Wow. What a phenomenal question to chew on, because whether you are optimizing a global software company or just trying to optimize your own morning routine, the mechanics are the same.
They really are.
You don't have to stay drowning in the noise. You can choose your metrics, you can wireframe your interface, and you can take the steering wheel.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We highly encourage you to experiment with dashboard wireframing to take control of the data in your own world. Until next time, keep questioning your metrics, keep looking at the windshield, and keep designing your data.